One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. Josh, I started the conversation with Danny with this very broad question of what she wished she would have known when she became head coach at Kent State that she didn't, that she now does, of course, given her experience. But I actually want to ask you kind of a different question along those same lines. You know, you grew through this business under two legendary coaches, Coach Calipari when he was at Memphis, and then previous to that, Coach Olson out at Arizona. Was there any point in time when you were at Memphis that you thought back to how they advised you on a number of different facets and thought, man, I wish Coach Cal or Lute would have really impressed this point on me even further on what it's like to be a head coach? Or is that just impossible and many young head coaches and young administrators, really, they just really have to grow into their own shoes?
Well, that's a good question, and a few things with that. And one, thanks for having me. I would say this. I mean, I've been very fortunate. Not too many guys in the profession, and you're probably talking on, a small 1% of the profession can say they've worked for two Hall of Famers. I was fortunate enough to play for Coach Olson and then work for him, and then obviously have worked for Coach Calipari. To have worked for two guys who've been elected into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame has given me a great perspective on the profession and obviously being around two elite level leaders. Here's what I would tell you. Coach Olson and Coach Calipari, you learn so much from being with those guys on how to run a program, on dealing with every aspect of the program. But from there, for me, I knew I always wanted to be a coach, a Division I head coach. I mean, that was my ultimate goal. And so I tried to study with them as much as I could during all aspects of the program and not taking any part of it for granted. And what I would tell you is, there is no exact science on when you become a head coach on how to run a program. Because there is no manual. There's not a handwritten procedure that tells you got to do this in step A, you got to do this in step B. And I'll tell you this why. When I was at Arizona as a player, I got my degree, my bachelor's degree in 2.5 years, and all this will make sense. I got my bachelor's degree in 2.5 years, no summer school coming in, and no units did I ever take in the summer. I did 5 semesters, semester 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in college as a student athlete and got my bachelor's degree. 45 hours completed my freshman year, my first 2 semesters, 42 semester 3 and 4, all 33 hours my 5th semester of college to get my bachelor's, 6th semester, 18 hours of master's work, 7th semester, 15 hours plus the thesis area, and I got my master's. So in 3.5 years, I had a bachelor's and master's. And I did that because I felt that when I was going to one day interview for a job, to get a Division I head job, I'd be meeting athletic directors, deans, presidents, committees of people. And I thought, what could separate me from the competition? And that would be the seriousness that I showed academically by doing what I did academically as a student athlete. And as I evolved, not only with that was my vision of that, looking down the line. And I evolved into where I had a book of philosophy that I learned from Coach Olson, and then my time with Coach Calipari, and then just from clinics and everything else and talking to coaches and really evolving in your own philosophy. I understood I could never be Lute Olson because I was, I had to be Josh Pastner. I couldn't be John Calipari. I had to be Josh Pastner. So I developed my own philosophy in my book. I had all my my details, what I would do at the press conference, what I would do my first 100 days on the job, what I would do. I had everything prepared to give to the committee when I had an opportunity to interview. And you know what? When I got the job at Memphis, I was in a shorts and T-shirt, basically sweats, driving to Lexington. I got turned around to being asked to go to speak to the athletic director because they couldn't hire anyone And I happened to meet him in shorts and, like I said, in his sweatpants at his house, without any binder or anything or any philosophy talk, if I wanted the job, because they needed to eventually hire somebody. And I was, thank the good Lord, R.C. Johnson gave me the opportunity. And so all that preparation of the graduate with the degree, the time, the manual that I put together of what I was going to do. So when I met with the deans and the athletic director and deputy ADs and the president, so everyone had all the plans in my coat and tie to get the Memphis job, which was a multi-million-dollar company that I was being handed the keys to. The greatest run in a 4-year period is in terms of wins. They're handing it over to a 31-year-old, and I got asked to be the head coach in a T-shirt and sweatpants without any knowledge of what I was going to do with philosophy. And so all that stuff I did, even though it probably led me to that, it was never used in interviewing for the job. So, yes, it allowed me to be prepared for when I became the head coach. But the point is, there is no manual. There is no certain thing. You can learn. But when you have that opportunity and that door opens up or that window opens up, it's on you as the individual just to take advantage of it. Yes, there's going to be mistakes. You're going to have some ups and downs. You're going to learn from your mistakes. You're going to grow. But when you move 6 inches over and you go from making suggestions to decisions, I don't care what anyone's told you. It's a whole different deal.
Interesting. And you have this great line, this really interesting line in the article. It says, I hope as I continue to grow and move forward in my coaching career, I can do better in not identifying my self-worth based on wins or losses. And I don't mean to overemphasize, the importance of winning or losing in the greater context of life as compared to college basketball, of course. But is this really possible? I mean, directly, what techniques do you plan to execute to better achieve balance and perspective compared to the on-court results?
Well, it's easier said than done. I think that's an area that I have to do better, where I can't let every single game dictate my, in a short way, of a sadness or happiness, depending on the outcome of the game. I have to do better on that if I want to last in this profession for the long haul, and I recognize that. I take each game hard, and that's why when we win, that's why I tell people all the time, you never take a win for granted, ever. Winning's hard, really hard. And so winning when you do it, the thrill of victory, you don't take those things for granted, ever. Because when you do lose, it stinks, and you feel it right in your gut. And it's hard, and no one takes it worse than the head coach. Nobody. It's the worst on the head coach. So I just think it's part of just continual growth in the profession. That's just things that I'm well aware that's an area that I have to continue to get better at. And I don't know if there's a way to do it other than probably just trying to do the best you can to keep it all in perspective, which I believe I do a great job, because the entire philosophy of my program is an attitude of gratitude. I'm really big believer in appreciation and gratefulness and not taking things for granted, especially being a head coach. I mean, I'm living out a dream. Win, lose, or draw, I'm living a dream that I had an opportunity to do and love what I do. But with that being said, I want to do right by my bosses, my athletic director and the president. I want to do right by the players. I want to do right by the former student athletes that were at the school. I want to do right by the fans and the alumni and my staff. And so when the outcome doesn't come to exactly where you want it, you feel like you've let people down, and that's just something that I got to continue to do better at.
You also talk.
Hopefully, in the end, that you win a lot more than you do lose, and so you can have better nights sleeping. I mean, at Memphis, we had won 70% of our games, and that's pretty much close to 3/4 of the time you're winning games, and so if you can have that type of success for the long haul, you're probably in good shape there.
You also talk quite a bit in the article about self-awareness and how when you became head coach at Memphis, you probably didn't have as thorough a self-awareness or as strong of a self-awareness as you feel like you should have. Looking back on the situation, hindsight's of course always 2020. But moving forward, what recommendations would you have for young advancing assistant coaches or young head coaches in the industry, and equally young administrators who need to have a strong self-awareness when they get to sit in the athletic director chair for the first time? How do you develop a better self-awareness at a young age?
Well, I think anytime you move over from going from an assistant to a head coach, as I mentioned, or maybe a deputy AD to an AD, you go from suggestions to decisions, which is a big difference. It's a big difference. On every little area, it's a big difference. Self-awareness it's an interesting, concept on that, and just being really self-aware of your strengths and weaknesses. I felt when I took over at Memphis, I knew my strengths and weaknesses, but probably didn't communicate them. Even though, like I said in the article, I felt I was a great communicator, I probably wasn't good enough because everything's about being so aligned on your vision and the vision of the alignment, the vision of the leader in charge. Everyone has to be aligned to that individual. Everyone, from the assistants to the players, support staff, managers, everyone in the athletic department, if it's an athletic director. And if there's one person not fully aligned with you, it can throw a wrench into where you're trying to get to. It can make you take a detour. And so, and I think that's what I learned so much on my 7 years at Memphis. And I've probably grown the most in that area of anything, of having such a clear definition and vision right now of what I believe where we need to get to and how to get there. Now, obviously, Georgia Tech's a different situation than when I took over Memphis. I mean, this is a different deal because it's a rebuild situation. This is going to take, the expectations, and I don't even like to use, as I said in the article, I don't like to use the word expectations. I like standards, but people from the outside have put expectations on, and it is a rebuild, so it's going to take some time. But at this point, through my 7 years at Memphis, it has allowed me to have such a clear, defined definition, clarity, vision of what I believe we all need to be aligned to get to where we need to get to and how we need to get there. Does that guarantee success? No. But I think it gives you a better opportunity to have the success that you need to do, especially in a situation like this where it becomes a rebuild. So we'll see how it all works out, but I'm excited about the next, chapter with my next phase of my head coaching career.
So real quick, lastly, will the style in which, the frequency in which, or the structure in which you communicate with your staff and support team and in administration, do you anticipate any of those changing from how you handled it at Memphis to how you will handle it now at Georgia Tech?
You know what? I really believe I've been a good communicator for the most part. I really have. I'm really big on communication. And look, I think anyone that's worked with, for me or with me knows that I believe in communication, and I've hired a lot of good people. I mean, I've had, 5 guys who work for me have become head coaches. So I've had, I've hired good people. I think that I've had to do a better job, me personally, of communicating my vision of how we need to get there, my alignment, what I believe we all need to be both aligned to in accord of what needs to happen. So it's not as much about more communication because I'm a communicator. It's probably about, hey, because I'm a non-gray area guy, but it's even more clearer than it's ever been in my time starting at Georgia Tech than it was at Memphis of what I believe what we need to do to get to where we need to get to. I think it's a very, very clear vision. It doesn't mean I'm going to not make mistakes, and there could be some times where I might even change at times if I feel we need to, if it's what's best for the program. But I just think the clarity of getting to where we need to get to will be clearly defined. And that starts with the leader. That's not with anyone else. That falls strictly on the head coach, the person in charge. That's his or her responsibility.
And that's today's One Question, brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. One Question is designed to give D1 Ticker subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences. One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.